Welcome back. An additional 220 megawatts of power is now available to the national grid following the commissioning of Unit 6 at the Igbin plant by President Goodluck Jonathan. President Jonathan at the event said that evidence of the power reform and privatization is already yielding results, adding that steady electricity supply will soon be taken for granted in Nigeria.
It's been a busy weekend for President Goodluck Jonathan as he continues to tenaciously pursue his policies and dreams of providing electricity for Nigeria. First, it was Olorin Shogo NIPP project, and here is another milestone in that direction. Power, for purposes of history and information, is West Africa's biggest thermal station with an installed capacity of 1,320 megawatts, comprising 6 units of 220 megawatts 30 years ago. But moribund several years on, especially Unit 6, which was down for 8 years, but with the privatization in place, it is fully on stream at a whopping cost of 50 billion naira.
Notwithstanding, the new owners are sure that the other 4 units will be overhauled within the next 12 months. It's expected that these overhauls will, as a result, increase the lifespan of this power plant by approximately another 20 years. Let me restate that we are committed to irreversibly reposition the Nigerian power sector as a pivot for the attainment of our nation's development targets.
Capacity is growing, policies are firming up, quick and long-term wins are ramping up, and the vibes from this feat indicates that the Lagos industrial and commercial areas will be the first partakers, just as government have promised diversified energy sources.
The major drawback has been this incessant vandalism, and government is doing something about it. Government is working very hard. We are trying to make sure that digital surveillance system, digital detecting systems are in place so that one is able to find out where these things occur, when they occur, and some of them have the capacity of even warning people who come close to the point that they want to attack.
Perhaps sooner than later, the whole essence of a privatized sector will be visible. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
Welcome to Sports News. Floyd Mayweather's long-awaited fight with Manny Pacquiao has finally been confirmed after months of negotiations. The two biggest names in boxing have been locked in prolonged talks, raising further doubts that the super fight could fall through at any time. But both men have finalized terms for the clash at the MGM Grand Arena in Las Vegas on May the 2nd this year. Additional stumbling blocks have been overcome in recent weeks, with both camps reaching an agreement on drug testing and both men able to wear their own gloves. No rematch clause has been included. The 37-year-old American, nicknamed Money Man, is unbeaten in 47 fights with 26 knockouts. But Pacquiao, who also has a nickname called Pac-Man, is considered the biggest threat to his status as the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. The showdown in Las Vegas is projected to be the most lucrative in boxing history. Mayweather is expected to have a 60-40 split advantage on revenues, earning a minimum of $120 million, and Pacquiao at least $80 million. Nigeria thrashed Gabon 4-1 in the first leg qualifier for the 2015 All-Africa Games in Libreville. Junior Ajayi grabbed the brace in the second and 46th minute, while Ogenekaro Etebo also hit the target in the 44th minute through a penalty. Substitute Peter Onyekachi wrapped up the win in the 88th minute. The hosts, who are the reigning champions, pulled a goal back in the 43rd minute. The return leg will be played at the Abuja National Stadium in a fortnight. And Nigeria's Golden Eaglets have qualified for the FIFA Under-17 World Cup in Chile later this year. The Eaglets outclassed Zambia 3-1 at the ongoing CAF Under-17 Championship to finish top of Group A. A Victor Osimhen brace and another from captain Kelechi Nwakali ensured the world champions reached the semi-finals of the biennial tournament. Guinea also booked their place at the World Cup despite suffering a 2-1 defeat at the hands of hosts Niger in the second game. The Nigeria international Victor Moses struck an injury time penalty as Stoke City spoiled Tim Sherwood's debut as Aston Villa manager. Chelsea had Nemanja Matic red-carded as the Premier League leaders were held to a 1-1 draw by relegation battling Burnley at Stamford Bridge. Arsenal survived a late scare but moved up to third after a hard-fought 2-1 win at Crystal Palace. Demi Ndoye scored his second Premier League goal as Hull City earned a late 1-0 win over QPR to move clear of the relegation zone. Man United suffered only their second Premier League defeat since November as Bafetimbi Gomez's late goal gave Swansea a 2-1 victory. And Man City recorded their biggest league victory of the season to overwhelm Newcastle 5-0 and cut Chelsea's title lead to 5 points. The win came at the Etihad Stadium. Romania's Simona Halep overcame Czech Karolina Pliskova 6-4, 7-6 in the final of the Dubai Championships to claim a 10th WTA singles title. This triumph will lift her back to third when the world rankings are released on Monday. Halep, who was promoted to top seed following Serena Williams' late withdrawal, was relentless at the Aviation Club. She converted her only break point in the opener to win the first set and then shrugged off 4 service breaks and 2 fluffed match points in the next set to secure a second title of 2015 following victory in the Shenzhen Open in January. And that's in the sports news. The news at 10 continues shortly.
The United States and United Kingdom are considering stiffer sanctions against Russia following the recent development in the eastern Ukraine conflict. During a visit to London, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry accused Russia of what he called craven behavior in its support for the rebels, undermining a ceasefire. But a Kremlin spokesman said sanctions would not help solve Ukraine's crisis. Since the ceasefire was agreed this month in Minsk, it has been threatened by violations. Meanwhile, the prisoner exchange has been carried out on the front line, the first stage of one of the key points of the deal. In the meantime, the Russian government and its supporters have begun a rally to mark the alleged coup in Ukraine, which ousted pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych in 2014. At least 10,000 people gathered in Moscow from across the country for the Anti-Maidan March, a reference to Ukraine's pro-EU protests that started on Kyiv's central Independence Square, widely known as the Maidan. Russian state media heavily promoted the rally and march with the slogan, "We won't forget, we won't forgive." Russia has since annexed Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula and is accused of backing rebels in eastern Ukraine. The Ukrainian government, Western leaders and NATO say there's clear evidence that Russia is helping the rebels with heavy weapons and soldiers, an allegation it has since denied.
Thousands of Russians marched on the capital Moscow on Saturday, carrying banners and signs contradicting the protest at Kiev's Independence Square or Maidan last year that ousted a Russian-backed president and created a rift between Ukraine and the West and Russia. Marchers at the front of the line carried one banner reading, "Yankees, get out and take the Maidan with you," and another using a play on words to portray Maidan protesters as people with the intellectual disability Down syndrome. Organizers said 20,000 people participated in the march in Moscow. Since the uprising, more than 5,600 people have been killed in fighting. Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, and relations between the West and Russia have fallen to Cold War-era lows. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Washington and its allies are not prepared to play games with Russia and are discussing further sanctions against Moscow as the ceasefire in eastern Ukraine continues to fall apart. Speaking ahead of talks in London with the British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond, Mr. Kerry said Russia has engaged in an absolutely shameless and cynical process over the last days.
We know to a certainty what Russia has been providing to the separatists, how Russia is involved with the separatists, and the ways in which Russia has cynically been willing to go to even lead an effort at the UN, even simultaneously as it is continuing to do land grabbing in Ukraine.
Ukraine accused Moscow on Friday of sending more tanks and troops into eastern Ukraine, despite a European brokered truce that went into force last Sunday. Russia did not immediately respond to the accusation, but Moscow has always denied assertions in the past that its forces are fighting in Ukraine.
Away from the crisis in Ukraine, Yemen's former president Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi, in a desperate bid to regain his freedom, has fled the capital, Sana'a, weeks after he was put under house arrest by Houthi rebels who forced him to resign. Mr. Hadi later arrived in the main southern city of Aden. This comes a day after rival parties agreed on the formation of a transitional council to govern the country. Yemen has been in crisis since the takeover by Houthis, a Shia group. And finally, tonight, as world electronic companies strive to set the agenda for wearable devices, one Japanese food manufacturer has designed a robotic tomato dispenser, the latest must-have for athletes participating in the 2015 Tokyo Marathon in Japan. Kagome and Miwa Denki are two companies with one heart seeking to ensure that tomatoes are consumed and enjoyed at sporting events.
Tomatoes are nutritional powerhouses containing essential vitamins that help combat fatigue. Meet Tomatan, the wearable robot that feeds you with fresh tomatoes as you run or jog. This 8-kilo mechanical backpack can sit snugly on the athlete's shoulders and can hold up to 6 mid-sized tomatoes in its reserve. The device allows the runner to consume one at a time just at the click of a button. It comes with a timer so that the wearer does not ingest too many tomatoes at a time or deplete supply quickly. For those who want a more constant supply, the wearable Tomatan mini version is their best bet.
We wanted to find a way in which tomatoes can be consumed at various sports events and to make this food more mobile.
So, when next you get on a jog or a long run and there is this yearning or thirst or hunger for a fresh tomato, this wearable robot can make all the difference.
Enjoying tomatoes any which way you want to. And the main news again. The Defense Headquarters today announced that it has recaptured the key border town of Baga in Borno State, with scores of militants said to have drowned in Lake Chad while fleeing bombardment by the Nigerian Air Force. Polytechnic lecturers have threatened to go on an indefinite strike to protest alleged non-implementation of agreement by the federal government. And the US and UK have begun to consider imposing stiffer sanctions on Russia following recent developments in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Harriet Agbeni. Have a great night and a pleasant weekend.